bad systems make good leaders look bad, and good systems make average leaders look good. That always stuck with me for whatever reason, and I was never much of a system guy until I got into LDP, and wow, it makes all the difference. You got to have people to execute it, of course, but good systems really help.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today Zach Jones from San Jose, California. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you having me, man. This is quite a cool opportunity. Never been a part of a podcast before, so I'm excited to jump right in and just have a great conversation together, man.
Yeah, this will be fun. So Zach, I know you love to play football. You were being recruited as a wide receiver, and then tell us a little bit about that story about kind of an interruption in that process, but then a later success in your football high school, college career.
Yeah, that man, that was a unique time, and fortunately, I was gifted with the ability to play football at a pretty high level, and I was succeeding and doing really well, and it garnered national attention with UGA, Georgia Tech, Middle Tennessee State, excuse me, and some other universities, and I was getting recruited. I was like, man, I'm awesome, big man on campus, as they say, and going into the summer of my senior year, a lot of pain in my foot. Didn't know what it was. Multiple X-rays didn't reveal anything, and then finally we decided to opt into an MRI, and that's when it revealed that I had a stress fracture in my foot. And the doctor said there's one of two options. You get surgery, and it's a guarantee heal, or the way stress fractures are, specifically where mine was, it was a pretty common basketball injury, actually. Stress fractures don't actually fully heal. They just continuously over time just reopen, close, reopen, close. And I was like, okay, right then and there, I was like, let's get surgery. He put me on the table. I waited for 8 hours. It was the last surgery of the day, and they put a little screw in my foot. 5-minute surgery, and then 2.5 months later, I'm out recovering. And once I had the surgery, started missing. I think I missed the first 2 games. First game I couldn't play at all. Second game I was able just to hold PATs, and one by one, getting calls from coaches. Letters ceased. I'll never forget. I was at youth group one night on a Sunday, and right before it started, I got a call from Middle Tennessee State, and it was the recruiter for our area. He was like, "Zach, man, you're a good football player. We think you're a great guy. You'd fit culturally, but right now we just got to take you off our board, and we're going to cease recruiting you." And in my mind, I'm like, "You said all these things, then why are you taking me off?" And so the whole time I'm just like staring into space during youth groups. I'm like, what is happening? My goal is to play at the next level. And so that senior year, I was like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. That injury really humbled me. And I was like, I'm just going to do the best I can and let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to control what I can control. And fortunately, that's what I did. And so fast forward to, it's like April, May, right before I graduate. And Coach John Thompson, who's the defensive coordinator for Georgia State, is in my coach's office in Macon. And they're like, hey, Zach, come down here. Let's have a talk. And I'm like, all right. So I have a conversation. He says, hey, we want you to be a part of our team. It's going to be the first football program or the first team in the school's history. And unfortunately, we don't have any money, but we'd love for you to join us as a preferred walk-on. And for those of y'all that don't know, a preferred walk-on is just a walk-on. It just kind of means they recruited me, but they can't give me anything. But I was just like, say no more. Georgia State, cool. Don't know much about it, but going to do my research. And so fortunately, I got accepted in Georgia State, ended up going there. And man, it was such a unique experience. Looking back now in hindsight, my dad told me the whole time I was playing, like, hey, you're playing with a legend, with Bill Curry, getting to really hear all the stories he has with Vince Lombardi. Coach Curry was the starting center for the Green Bay Packers when they won the Super Bowl for Super Bowl I. And just hearing stories about Bart Starr and like other leaders he played with that were just not just great players, but phenomenal leaders. And he just poured so much into us as a 18 to 21, 22-year-old. You're just like in one ear, out the other. But fortunately, a lot of things stuck, and didn't play much. That first year was tough because all we did was practice, and it was full pads Monday through Wednesday, and every Thursday we'd scrimmage. So thank goodness I was young, because we could recover. If I did that now, I'd be broken. But man, learned so much from Coach Curry, and really instilled what core values are. You know, you hear about them all the time, but we had four. It was faith. What was it? Faith, family, football, and finishing your education. And so those were the four F's of our core values with Georgia State. And um, yeah, man, just learned so much, and really shaped me into who I am now. If it wasn't for Georgia State and having the opportunity to play football there, I wouldn't have met my wife, and I definitely do not think I would be here having this opportunity as a Chick-fil-A operator. So
What a great story. Thanks for sharing. So, yeah, what ended up being a real setback in so many ways, or felt like a real setback at the time, this other opportunity popped up that is now you're reaping the rewards for, even today. So, thanks for sharing that story.
yeah, it's you just never know. That's probably one of the biggest lessons of those times. It was so hard in the moment. Like, thought my whole world was crumbling down. I'm only 18. Like, got my whole life ahead of me. I'll be all right. But you just never know how God is working in your life at the time to prepare you for something in the future until you actually get to that moment. So yeah.
So, Zach, here you are. You have this team you've built. Kind of starting from scratch, which reminds me of football days, right? Just starting from scratch. I'm sure you're able to use some of those principles even now. So, you have this team around you. What, just to help us understand a little bit more about your leadership style, what would you say would be your kind of leadership kryptonite or superpower first, and then your kryptonite as a leader?
Yeah. So the superpower, my top five directors came together and said it was actually developing others and developing leaders. They gave me three strengths and three weaknesses. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Ask for one and one. So,
Well,
but
good.
yeah, they gave me they said developing others and leaders, which that really meant a lot, because you just don't know sometimes, like in the moment, how effective your coaching and direction is being taken, received, is it being implemented. And so that was a very reassuring to, like, okay, what myself and my wife, like what we're coaching and challenging them on is actually sticking. And it's some of it starting to come to fruition, like through them. So that is a very humbling and rewarding experience.
It's great that they can see it. I bet that was just a really encouraging moment for them to be able to say that back to you, just kind of asking the question for that to be one of the top ones would be tremendous. So good for you. What would be then, what did they say was your kryptonite?
Totally makes sense too. They said I am too involved. So
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't expecting that one. I'm I'm a seven on the Enneagram. I'm charismatic football player, so I can be intense. And I was like, hey, give me a kryptonite. I know it's probably going to be M too intense, but it wasn't. Um, it was that too involved, and so I asked him to elaborate, and how I am interpreting that, and based off some of the things they then responded, to my question to them, or what that is. It's almost like I'm suffocating them, and they want room to do it on their own. And so with my time as a leader at Chick-fil-A and LDP, and even the first 6 months to a year, you're very hands-on and very involved. And so this is a unique growth opportunity for me to really step back. And even though some things I might catch before them, and it would, maybe save a couple dollars here and there, or maybe I guess what I've experienced if I stepped in and did this, it's better for the organization and for their development, if I kind of loosen the grip a little bit. And so that's a work in progress, but I'm appreciative of that feedback, because I see it and I know they feel it. So
Well, based on that, sounds like, that's one good example of your culture. What are some things, Zach, that you really love about the culture that you have with your team now?
with our culture brand that we talk about so often, with being results oriented, uh, teamwork, and character, the last couple months, like what I've been investing into the team, just with one-on-ones, et cetera, trying to coach and develop those top leaders, I'm starting to hear some of those things like said back to me or out loud to the team, whether it's like, hey, grab and go when we're talking about outside expo or whatever it may be. I'm starting to see from like an execution perspective, which is like our buzzword for results. I'm hearing them just constantly repeat that to the team. And so from an execution perspective, like our team is fully, oh, well, not fully, but majority of the team is fully embracing that. Like, hey, we want to execute at a high level. We want to be fast. We want to be accurate. And so it's really been rewarding to see that from afar. And, when you talk about teaming and togetherness, it's to see people that didn't know each other before and now they're close friends. They hang outside of work, they game outside of work, to see those relationships, come together and foster and grow at the restaurant is unique as well. And I remember if I ever got the opportunity to be an operator, it's like, man, I can't wait to have my own team. And like now I do. And it's cool to see some of those people coming together and really building meaningful relationships. So it's been really rewarding to watch the team grow from where they were day one to where we are. Is it's completely different team from an execution perspective. So and confidence.
That's so good. So just to flesh some of that out, and I heard a few keywords in there. What are the three words you've selected for your culture brand?
Yeah. So the three areas, like I mentioned earlier, right? We got results, we have teaming, and then we have character. And for us, our buzzword for results is execution. To dive into that a little bit, that's football backgrounds. You have to all 11 people, whether offense, defense, special teams, to win or be successful. You all have to execute and do your job. And so that's why we chose that word for the results piece of our culture. We chose togetherness for teaming. That was what my team selected during our workshop, and I think it really embodies how majority of the team, how they interact with each other, both inside, excuse me, and outside of work. And then lastly, for character, my team, the buzzword we use is integrity, and that's one of our 5 core values as well. And so, yeah.
So you putting those together, this is how you talk about your culture and help everyone understand the culture that they're trying to build is, hey, let's all work on execution, let's all work on togetherness, and let's all work on integrity. And really holding all three of those at the same time is the challenge. So I love how you've been able to build that into your team, and are you starting to see some fruit? Like how deep in the organization do you feel like your culture brand is impacting?
Yeah, I think for us, like from a director level, we're all bought in, and now we're working now on the process of trickling that down and leading up and down the chain of command, as Jocko talks about, and getting it all the way down to the team member experience and level. And so we talk about execute a lot, and so that's the one word we use pretty often, and the team is they're doing that. You can see them flip a switch, like whenever the going gets tough, as the expression says, like this the switch gets flipped, man, and they just start cranking out cars or serving guests well. And um, from a team perspective, it's one we don't say teaming, we don't say togetherness too much out loud, but it's more about like what we preach and like how we I guess how we like work alongside each other. Um, and then from an integrity standpoint, character is when it comes to course correcting, a team member, we always bring that we bring that up if it's, whatever infraction it is. But the togetherness and the character piece is what we really try to focus on in the interview stage. And then of course, can someone execute as a team? That's my core value number one. And so we're doing a much better job of when it comes to interviewing and hiring individuals. Do they meet our core values? And then can we find a way to hear stories, examples of how they might demonstrate they're going to be a good fit within that culture brand as well now. So that's been the extra added piece to the, your standard core value questions.
Zach, I noticed in that interview process that you just described, you're using culture brand to kind of look at people and figure out if they fit on your team. But what I heard you say is we're primarily looking at, you said, integrity and togetherness. In other words, you're looking at their character and you're looking at how they work with people or how they kind of fit in. And you're not as much looking at execution. So then once they're on the team, how do you get them then to win at execution also?
You know, if we can find somebody that, one, we can trust from a character perspective, and two, they're a good team player, then that individual naturally, at least in my opinion, will not want to let the person to the left or right of them down, kind of like in football. Like, I'm going to do my job so it helps out my teammates so we're all successful. And that's what we're trying to find. When we bring them into the restaurant from an execution and results perspective, like, I'm going to teach you how to do that. I'm going to teach you how to make the perfect Chick-fil-A sandwich. I'm going to teach you how to pull cars up and how to be precise and to be efficient and to be quick and accurate. Like, I'm going to teach you all of that. And it's a process. Once they get more confidence, then they're going to be able then to execute at a higher level. And that's what we're trying to communicate to. That's what my directors and myself talk about. That's what we communicate to the leaders, and then try to encourage those team members when we train them. You know, their first 10 shifts paired with a trainer or a captain, as we call them, is, hey, just get comfortable in doing it right. Once you get comfortable in doing it right and you know what you're doing, you know where the buttons are, you know what to say, then you're going to be able to do it quick, which is what we're asking for. And so that's what we do. It's our training process. So
Yeah, I love it. So what I hear you saying in that is we're actually through the interview process kind of eliminating some of the harder things that we feel like that are harder to teach. We're looking for people that are kind of already there on being able to work with other people and having strong integrity. And so we feel like once we have those people, then we can skill them up. Skills can be learned. Character is really hard to develop. So yeah, and not all of the people that use Culture Brand kind of take that approach, but it sounds like it's working for you, and you're able to actually dial that in and figure out that's our strategy for growing the culture that we have. So good job.
yeah, absolutely.
So Zach, as you've been, you've identified, you and your team have identified the culture that you want to have. What are some systems or practices, suggestions for other leaders out there as they build culture? What are some things that you feel like are working for you?
Yeah, for us, when it comes to like systems, that's a big piece of, I would say, the execution perspective. I heard from another operator when I was in the leadership development program. He talked about how bad systems make good leaders look bad, and good systems make average leaders look good. And so that always stuck with me for whatever reason. And I was never much of a system guy until I got into LDP, and wow, it makes all the difference. You got to have people to execute, of course, but good systems really help. And so I've passed that on to my leaders that, like, hey, we've got to have good systems when it comes to an execution perspective. So we're constantly looking, and I'm challenging them to be mindful. Don't just have your heads down during peak times. You know, heads up, and let's assess: do our current systems help us or hurt us during the current volume we're experiencing right now? And do we need to make adjustments? Is a system cracking? That's one thing we've been working on together, is kind of thinking ahead. Is it going to crack or break, or is it currently cracking? Has the system completely broken and we need to reinvent a new one, or hey, we're good? And so that's one thing from like an execution perspective we've really been focused on is systems, and being able to have contingency plans depending on what the volume may be, different levers to pull for systems. So yeah, that's one of the things from a, I guess, execution perspective.
Okay. So getting your team, your leaders especially, to have a what I call kind of a higher business horizon. They're looking at the business, like you said, heads up. They're seeing those systems as they play out rather than just, being a cog in the wheel, right? They're stepping back, which you're encouraging them to do. Look at the larger system. Then if you're working to, kind of look at your systems and go deep and find these cracks and solutions, what does that feedback loop look like as far as the communication in your organization? How do you have that feedback loop that works in a positive way?
Yeah, this is something we've actually within the last few weeks are in the process of trying to get better at, actually. A lot of times it's just been us looking at the systems, and if we're not paying attention to it, then kind of no one was. And so now I've really challenged the team and told them that, it starts with me as well. Just walking through the restaurant and asking the team, and I took this from um, a podcast or a quick YouTube clip from Simon Sinek and then a couple of other Chick-fil-A calls that I was on recently. Um, just going to not just like all the other leaders, but team members as well, and just asking, hey, what do you need to be successful, or what is hard about your job right now, to see if they can, to see if the team, because they're the ones that have to execute it, the system or whatever operational play we're doing, they have to execute it every single day, all day. And so they're going to be the ones that have the most intel of like, hey, this is working or it's not working. And so I want them to feel empowered to give us feedback like, hey, I don't think this system's working, or to encourage my leaders, directors as well, to go up to somebody and see like, hey, is this working or not? That's something we've just started to implement, to do a better job of. And the analogy you and I use with the pulling of the rope. And so giving the team and the team leaders the opportunity to tug on their end a little bit and say, hey, director, hey, Zach, this isn't working. We need to fix this. We've had a couple team members do that already. Like one of the team members in the back of house sent a very well written email to my director of operations, just like, hey, Gabri, to help us be more successful, we need this fixed and we need to order these pieces of utensils and equipment. And I was like, man, that's great that they're feeling confident, and someone, took the initiative and the courage to say, hey, we need this to do our jobs better at the high level that you're asking us to do it at. And so that's been pretty rewarding to see as well. And so we're trying to grow that new little, I guess, tidbit you should say, that we're implementing into our leadership.
I love it. I love how you're trying to activate every brain in the organization. So it's not just, two or three brains that run in this whole thing. It's like, no, we all have brains. Let's all look at this. We all have eyes. Let's all look at this. Let's have some strong good conversation about if it's working or not, and everybody's opinion matters. What are some actual ways, some practical ways that you and your team create systems for accountability?
Yeah, I think a big one for us has been what we call Cadence Mondays. And my team is, especially my directors, very young. They're as old to Chick-fil-A as the restaurant is. They're also brand new to leadership. And so leading, and then a big piece that we're trying to grow and to expedite is just their ability to plan ahead, think ahead, forward thinking, as my team has heard me call it. And so Cadence Mondays has been a way for us to try to grow that. It started with, hey, what's your focus for the week? And for a couple weeks, couple months, the team was sending me just a to-do list, tasks. And I wanted to up it the next level based off a conversation you and I had. And so I was like, okay, let's kind of split it into two. What are your kind of to-do tasks? But then also tell me this week on Monday, how are you trying to improve the business? And so now the team's starting to differentiate, okay, what's making an actual impact versus getting a checklist done, or, finishing the schedule. What are lead actions you're taking Monday through Saturday that's going to, improve, let's just say front of house, how are you focusing on order accuracy? What are you looking for? And so now their brains are starting to think that way. And now I've taken it to the next level the last 3 weeks, and I've asked the team with Cadence Mondays, you have your schedules ahead of time now. I want you to not just tell me what are your tasks, how are you going to make the business better, but now break it down each day and plan your week out. And I told them with that leadership principle, leadership out loud, like, we're going to try this. My hope is that you're doing all three of these things now. You're going to continuously, your mind's going to be thinking, okay, a couple shifts ahead, a couple days ahead. And now can we get to maybe just a couple weeks ahead? With my director of operations making their schedules, they can now plan ahead essentially 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Really just trying to exercise that leadership muscle, so to speak. And so far it's been pretty good. It's going to be one of those things that's not going to, we may not see the roots or the fruits of the labor right out the gate, but I have a good feeling it's going to work. So we'll see.
I love it. I love how, you've adopted this principle that part of leadership is asking great questions. And so as you began looking at the question you were asking, you were getting an answer for the question you were asking. What are you doing? And so you've had this transformation. You're even adding kind of a new level of another question that you're interested in them seeing, and it's changed their eyesight, hasn't it? It's really changed the focus of where they're looking at the business. So just, for the listener, think about, if you're not getting the answers you want, maybe consider changing the questions that you have. So think about what you're really asking your teams. One of the principles, Zach, I know you're really bought into, is this idea of developing leaders that develop leaders. And so as you look at your organization, what are some, I know you're a leader developer. I mean, that your team actually said that right at the beginning, right? That's your superpower. But now, how do you see them developing leaders? Are they, where are the sparks of that happening, where it's kind of multi-layered leadership development?
So we do we do a lot of one-on-ones. Me and the directors do one-on-ones. I meet with Cabri quite a lot, with her being the director of operations. Every other week we do a director meeting. It's usually the first meeting is around the beginning of the month, which we have one tomorrow, and it's just focused on business results. Hey, how did we finish in April? What are some trends we're seeing that we can either correct or build upon and identify now early in June, so we don't miss opportunities for the whole month? And then we meet again in the middle of the month and we just talk about, okay, how's the month going? And usually there's a leadership principle we focus on for about half the meeting, whether we get it from Get Abstract, from Leadwell, or whatever. And so showing them how to kind of coach and develop others, and how to host meetings now. Excuse me, when I don't host the back of house or front of house or captain's meeting anymore. Sometimes I go to those, but usually Cabri sits in for me now, and it's it's really rewarding to see that our agendas we create off of the 5 critical success factors from Chick-fil-A, and man, they make the same agendas and they fill it out, and I haven't asked them to send me their agenda anymore because they kind of got it. And it's a really cool thing to see, and just very humbling and rewarding. And it's trickling down to the supervisors and the team leaders now. Cabri's having one-on-ones with team leaders every so often. Maya, my front house director, is having one-on-ones with her directors to kind of coach them on certain metrics that her and I have spent a lot of time on. And so it's really cool to see this domino effect of it just trickle down from one layer to the next. And um, yeah, it's just a rewarding feeling to see that. Yeah.
That's so good. What I hear in that is, you do have these young leaders, and they do still need you, right?
Yeah.
They're not at a place where you just have been able to fully turn them loose. But what I heard in that was, I'm taking time to invest in them and modeling some certain practices, these one-on-ones, and certain attention to metrics, and this, how we run a meeting. But they've been able to turn around without you. And remember, they said, kind of, you're too deep in the business or whatever, and so you've been really working on kind of letting them run, and they are now, they're running when you're not there. So I love that idea of, there's kind of two sides. Like, I still am involved with my leaders, developing them, but I do it in a way that they could turn around and do it again with the next layer down or other leaders around them. Does that describe that pretty well?
Oh, absolutely. And it's, with the amount of time that Cabri and I spent together, I didn't mean for this to happen, but this is how she interpreted my message. And so now we just run with it, and it's actually worked out well. But Cabri handles one-on-ones with the directors. We both do. And she talks more about the tactical day-to-day, hey, let's plan for, systems, whatever. And then for me, I get to sit down and really just kind of focus on leadership with them. And one of my favorite questions to ask them right now is like, hey, what do you want to know, or what do you want to be true 3 to 6 months from now? So I'm trying to really challenge their forward thinking, and it's worked out pretty well. The goals haven't been too lofty or things like, oh, I want to develop this person by this date, or I want this CEM metric to be this. And to me, right now I don't really care what it is, as long as, hey, I just want their wheels turning, and then just thinking ahead. And then from there, it's peeling the layers back, and like, okay, if you want this person developed by, I don't know, make something up, end of June, who do we need to communicate to? What adjustments need to be made? from a scheduling perspective, et cetera. Just trying to get them to think what's all, okay, if I want to complete this, what all is going to touch whatever goal that is in order to get it done. And so that's what I get to do now with the directors. I do miss part of the reason why they probably said I'm too involved. I do miss the tactical day to day X's and O's because, I love a whiteboard. I'm a football guy, but, it's challenged me to really focus on a different piece of their development as a director and leader. And for Kurt Bree, for a challenge for her to focus on that other piece of the director role when it comes to the day to day tactical part of the business.
I love it. I'm glad you mentioned football again because I wanted to ask, what's something from your football days that you've been able to use, you even use today? What's still impacting you in leadership now?
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways from Coach Curry that he used to preach to us all the time, and I didn't quite start to understand it until like my last year or two with him, but he always talked about all the time the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, and not the pain of discipline like you're in trouble, but the pain of discipline of doing the right thing the right way all the time. And hey, sometimes putting immediate gratification to the side to do what's best for the team or to do what's right, etc. Replace it, plug it in. Versus the pain of regret of just like, I'm not going to work hard and that's going to be the result. For example, there'd be times where my teammates, whenever we were running like sprints or whatever, they'd come up short and they wouldn't touch the line, and then we get in trouble. We'd have to do even more, or we'd have to start over, right? But looking back, like I fully understand how that doesn't. It translates to everything else you do. If you were taking shortcuts on a football field, you're probably going to take shortcuts in the classroom or in life, and so it's the same thing that I try to preach to the team. Not necessarily, I don't use really the word pain of discipline or regret, in the workplace because those don't sound too great. But I try to talk about committing to excellence is how I've kind of replaced that. And I just say, hey, doing the right thing the right way all the time, committing to excellence, committing to excellence. It's the finer details, like cleaning underneath something that no guest or team member is going to see, or like touching the line when you're running. And so that's probably been the biggest thing that I took away from Coach Curry, is just those two decisions. It's either shortcuts or I'm going to choose the right thing, even though it might not be the easiest thing at the time. And so that's what I've really tried to preach to the team is, hey, let's just commit to excellence, do your best.
Zach, as you think about one question I want to make sure I ask you, and it can be a challenging question. So think about how you might answer this. What from your past, as you look back on your journey, wherever this answer might, or this question might hit, what's something as you look at your leadership journey that at the time really felt like a failure, but it ended up propelling you forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. There's a couple. I think one is there's a couple circling through my head. One I would say is when I first applied to leadership development program. It was an awful interview. First interview, got wrecked. Got told no, not now, and that felt like a major failure because everyone around you is like, "Oh, you're ready. You're gonna get in," and did not get in. And so it's at that point, it's trying to figure out what's next. I've kind of put all my eggs in this basket. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Does God have another plan? And so that kind of, through some mutual connections, um, didn't force our hand, but we were like, we are going to take this risk. This was so out of the blue that we're going to do it. And so then we moved out to Las Vegas to work at another Chick-fil-A and um, learned a lot there. It was what I needed because as a young leader at the time, I guess I still am a young leader, but at the time I was very relational. Challenging conversations were hard. Didn't really know how to achieve results in a business setting. And moving out there to work for that operator really taught me how to do that. To where it definitely made me more balanced. And the second time I applied to the leadership development program, I got in. And looking back, it was a hard journey to go on. Of course, I would have loved to have been told yes in the very beginning, but I would have failed, I guess, in my terms, just because I didn't know the business like I needed to know it to be a good participant for, my peers and then the operators that we would have served. So very fortunate looking back, like even though it was a hard journey, it was a necessary one to get us to where we are today.
I love how you frame that in terms of, I got this no, and it pushed us to take a risk we might not have ever taken. And that risk pushed you forward, and you grew in ways that were unexpected. Maybe didn't even realize you needed them at the time. Well, Zach, it's such a privilege having you on the show. Thanks for sharing your leadership journey and, sharing about how you're building the culture on your team. Also, these setback stories and how you work through those, and even see those as opportunities where it led you to a different door that you didn't realize was even there. And so what a beautiful way to share your leadership journey. And we look forward to the days ahead as your team grows and y'all continue to win together. So thank you for taking the time to be on the show.
Yeah, man, appreciate you having me. This is a first for me and such a cool opportunity. Very humbled to be a part of this, and look forward to chatting again in the future and just telling you the stories about where we are from year and a half to year 2.5 or 3. So looking forward to it.
That's right. Okay, let's just mark a point in time and circle back.
That's right.
Do this again and just see what's changed from now till then. That'd be awesome.
That's right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time. We would like to note that Leaders Q serves individual owner-operators and their teams and is not affiliated, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Chick-fil-A Incorporated.